In all chaos there is a cosmos, in all disorder a secret order. Carl Jung, modern man in search of a soul. The same shapes whisper across centuries. Imagine dawn breaking over the dust-gold hills of southeastern Turkey. Beneath your feet lies Göbekli Tepe, the oldest known temple on Earth, raised almost 12,000 years ago, long before writing, metal, or even pottery. Its T-shaped monoliths bear serpents, raptors, and the great unblinking eye. Those images are not random decorations. They are messages carved for minds that had never met us, just as they had never met the Maya sculptors who, millennia later and an ocean away, would chisel the very same eye into jade. Why do the patterns repeat? First, let us weigh the scholar's answer. Anthropologists speak of convergent cognition. Separate peoples, facing similar problems, may favor the same simple forms: spirals for growth, circles for unity, zigzags for water or lightning. Neuroscientists add that our visual cortex loves symmetry and logarithmic curves. The spiral of a chambered nautilus and the swirl of a hurricane follow mathematics hardwired into the brain. This explains why a form is pleasing, but not why identical mythic codes appear where no trade route ever ran. Carl Jung reached further. He proposed the collective unconscious, an invisible reservoir where primordial images, or archetypes, float beneath all cultures. The serpent that sheds its skin to be born anew, the eye that sees without lids, the mother tree that binds earth to sky, these are not inventions but memories older than memory. When an initiate in Egypt painted the Ouroboros and a priest in pre-Columbian Peru set turquoise into the shape of the same devouring snake, they were dipping into a shared sea of symbols, each believing he sailed alone. Yet even Jung leaves a door ajar. Where, after all, is this reservoir stored? Biologist Rupert Sheldrake ventured an answer: morphogenetic fields, informational lattices that hold patterns for living forms and, perhaps, for ideas. Just as a crystal grows by referring to a hidden geometry, so a culture may crystallize myths by aligning with a field that already hums in the atmosphere. Critics call the theory unproven, admirers call it a bridge between science and mystery. Either way, it reminds us that the map of thought may extend beyond the skull. Pause the arguments for a heartbeat and reach out in imagination. Your palm meets the chill of Pillar 18, dusting your fingertips with limestone older than history. Suddenly, an almost electrical recognition flashes inside. The serpent on the stone slides across the inner surface of your eyelids, matching a dream you barely recall. For a breathless instant you sense that symbols are not pictures at all, they are folded frequencies, vibrations trapped in stone or ink waiting to unfold in any consciousness that touches them. Consider the spiral again. You trace it in ochre on a cave wall in northern Spain 40 millennia ago, you weave it into Celtic knots on a misty Irish shore, you carve it into a basalt moai on Easter Island. Each gesture feels original, yet carries the same quiet thrill of rediscovery. Modern physicists tell us space-time itself may be helical, galaxies curling like ammonites across the dark. If the universe repeats the spiral at every scale, perhaps artists merely echo a blueprint already etched into the fabric of being. Look next at the Eye Horus in Egypt, the solar disk in Peru, the all-seeing triangle gleaming atop Renaissance churches. Anatomists note that the iris is a mandala of radial muscles. Neuroscientists observe that an infant locks onto eyes first, long before it understands words. The eye may be our oldest portal of meaning, the place where another mind reveals itself. Little wonder that cultures gift the eye with divinity. It is the first symbol every baby deciphers. Finally, let us test the idea of simple diffusion, the notion that travelers, merchants, or conquering armies ferried images across the map. Diffusion is real, silk and stories both followed caravan roads. But Göbekli Tepe predates those roads by thousands of years, standing in what should have been informational silence. Yet its carvings rhyme with signs found on the far side of the planet. Either some lost civilization once spanned the globe, or human beings, scattered and alone, tuned their imaginations to one cosmic broadcast. So which explanation do we trust? Convergent brains, collective dreams, morphic fields, or forgotten empires? Perhaps all of them at once, folding over one another like layers of an ancient palimpsest. Symbols endure because they are polyvalent, scientific and spiritual, biological and mythic. They are the bridges we keep finding, even when the rivers below have changed their names. If memory needs no maps, the ancients did not copy, they remembered. And as you withdraw your hand from the stone, a final thought settles in the heart. We, too, are ancients in the making. The next mind to awaken this serpent might be a child unborn, reading lines you have yet to write. We will follow the mirror further, into Egypt, Sumer, and the Indus, where carved eyes stare back across the ages and insist that nothing important is ever truly lost. We leave Turkey and step east, then south, then impossibly back in time, following a ribbon of river light that becomes the Euphrates, the Tigris, and at last the shimmering valley of Sumer. Clay tablets lie everywhere here, the baked memories of the world's first cities. Among their wedge marks hides a symbol scholars nicknamed Dinger, a cuneiform star, for points flaring like a compass. It meant God, sky, and sometimes simply the concept of height, whatever lived above the mortal roof. Cross to Egypt and the sign is reborn as a 5-pointed star on tomb ceilings, a map for souls navigating the Duat. Sail farther, down the Indus, and a 4-point rosette blooms on tiny soapstone seals. 3 civilizations, 3 writing systems, no shared alphabet, yet the star watches from every corner like a single eye set in many faces. Why does the mirror keep reflecting itself? Archaeologists once blamed imitation. Sumerian merchants, they said, must have carried their sky sigil west to Nile and east to Mohenjo-Daro. Then came the carbon dates. The Egyptian stars are as old as the Mesopotamian, the Indus rosettes nearly as ancient. Trade cannot explain synchronic birth. Something deeper is at work, call it resonance, call it the memory of light. Listen to the linguists. They note that wherever the star appears, the local word root connotes breath or spirit. In Sumerian, Esilu is the life breath of a deity, in Egyptian Sikkim is the vital power that survives death, the Sanskrit prana in Vedic hymns is the cosmic wind that animates flesh. Languages unrelated by blood nonetheless rhyme in meaning. It is as if the star is whispering the same lesson in different tongues. Everything that lives is secretly airborne. Now pivot the mirror and let it catch the serpent. In UR, the snake coils around the tree of life on cylinder seals. In Egypt it crowns the brow of every pharaoh as the uraeus. In India it sleeps at the base of the spine as kundalini. Modern biologists might point out that the double helix of DNA also spirals like a serpent, encoding life in paired fangs of nitrogen and sugar. Ancient scribes lacked microscopes, yet their myths already wrapped creation in a coiling line. Perhaps the mirror reflects not only culture to culture but microcosm to macrocosm, the flesh of gods and the code of cells both writing the same curved sentence. Let us widen the lens again. The Sumerians etched 8-petaled flowers on door lintels to guard against chaos. Egyptians filled their temples with 8-fold ogdoads of primordial beings. The Indus seals offer lotuses whose petals, yes, number 8. Modern physicists speak of an 8-fold way to classify quarks, the hidden architecture of matter. Coincidence? Maybe. Yet the ancients reached that number through vision alone, and vision, uncorrected by math, is rarely so consistent. At this point the academic voice clears its throat. It reminds us that ideas do travel. Obsidian blades from Anatolia show up in Mesopotamia, lapis from Afghanistan dazzles Egyptian jewelry, Indus beads wash ashore on Persian Gulf islands. Diffusion is real. But diffusion is not Xeroxing. Traders adopt useful things, priests guard sacred signs. For a symbol to leap intact from altar to altar, it must land on minds already prepared to receive it, like seeds blown across oceans that sprout only where the soil shares a forgotten chemistry. And what of the gods themselves? Sumer's Ninjisida, Egypt's Wajet, India's Nagas, serpent deities, all guardians of gateways and fountains of healing. Their statues share the hooded head, the watchful eyes, the posture of sudden uncoiling. We could argue that snakes simply abound in warm riverlands, or we could suspect that humanity keeps projecting an inner power outward, giving it scales and a hiss so we do not have to bear its gaze directly. Pause a moment and test the hypothesis on your own interior screen. Close your eyes. Does the serpent flicker? Does the star flare just behind the brow? If so, you have located the mirror's hidden surface, consciousness itself. The ancients built monuments. We bear the same stones inward, arranging them nightly in dream. So the evidence mounts, shared symbols, parallel numbers, matching gods. The logical mind arranges explanations, trade, environment, convergent psyche, but none close every gap. Meanwhile, the symbols themselves continue their quiet labor, bridging languages, centuries, and hemispheres. They hint that beneath the splintered history there is a single story told in shapes. Next, we will dive into that story's heartbeat, the strange idea that a symbol is not merely a sign but a seed, an energy packet waiting to unfold inside whoever encounters it. We will touch the stones again, but this time we will listen for the pulse beneath the carving. The serpent may yet stir. The star may yet bloom. And the map we thought we lost could shine from within the palm of the hand. The symbols are still speaking. Listen closely, and the whisper turns inward toward a subtler truth. A sign is not simply an image, it is a seed. Picture the tiny pomegranate seed the priests of Persepolis once pressed into wet clay, confident that the pattern alone could bless a harvest. Or the obsidian bead carved with a spiral in formative period Mexico hung around a child's neck to guide her dreams. Across millennia, artisans handled signs the way farmers handle kernels, trusting that the life inside would one day burst free. Modern physics gives that faith an unexpected echo. A photon, traveling as a wave, collapses into a particle only when observed. Information hides, then blossoms. In the same way, a symbol lies dormant until attention strikes it like flint. The moment you notice the serpent, something in your nervous system uncoils, your breathing lengthens, your pupils widen a fraction. Biochemists can measure the pulse shift, yet the experience feels older than measurement, an ancient vertebrate alertness stirring in the spinal cord. Take the spiral again, but this time imagine it folded in 3 dimensions, becoming a double helix. For nucleotides, adenine, thymine, cytosine, guanine, repeat across billions of base pairs to spell one human body. Molecular biologists call this sequence code, though it contains no letters. Life writes itself in shape, not alphabet. When shamans from the Amazon brew ayahuasca, they report visions of ladders of light twisting into infinity. They did not see X-ray crystallography, they saw the same geometry our microscopes eventually proved. A seed, by nature, hides its future. Crack an acorn and you find no tiny oak, only packed potential. Yet place that acorn in soil and water and sun, and the invisible pattern declares itself. Symbols behave identically. An Egyptian ankh pendant on a museum wall is decorative until someone searching for renewal fixes on it. Then the loop cross becomes a doorway and the visitor feels something like fresh air rush through the mind. No historian can predict which glyph will germinate in which viewer. The timing is intimate, personal, and strangely precise, as though the seed knows the season. Neuroscientists tracking such moments speak of the salience network, a circuit that lights up when a detail leaps from background to foreground. It is as if the brain keeps fertile soil ready, waiting for the next meaningful seed to drop. Mystics would say the soul keeps that soil. Either way, a symbol that once hovered as decoration suddenly feels aimed. Consider, too, the way seeds travel. Botanists call it a nemo and zoochory when wind or animals carry kernels across whole continents. Culture copies nature. A Phoenician glass amulet drifts on trade winds to Iberia. A Buddhist Dharma chakra rides a monk's memory into the Himalayan plateau. Many land among stones and never sprout, but some find compatible minds en route instantly, blooming into new scriptures, frescoes, or lullabies. The seed idea also explains why certain symbols mutate yet remain recognizable. The Sumerian star becomes the Egyptian 5-pointer, then the European pentacle. The essence persists while the outline shifts, the way a seed thrown into different latitudes alters leaf shape but keeps its genetic core. Symbols adapt to dialect, climate, theology, always bending back to the same invisible blueprint. Readers of genetics know another secret: most seeds store errors, mutations that eventually fuel evolution. Likewise, symbolic drift can innovate. In medieval alchemy, the Ouroboros gains wings. Renaissance engravers give it feathers of fire, turning cyclical time into upward ascent. The mutation startles, then settles into legend, offering later seekers a chance to climb rather than circle. Error, viewed from distance, is simply a new possibility sprouting. Some scholars argue that the language of mathematics functions as the ultimate seed set, its symbols, pi, infinity, square root, unlocking entire worlds once combined. Yet math itself borrows from older glyphs. The serpent coils into the integral sign, the circle of the wheel becomes 0. Every harvest refers back to some primordial planting. So stand again before the carved pillar or the printed page and observe what stirs when a shape catches you. The rustle inside your chest is the seed coat cracking. A warmth spreads up the spine, first root. Then an idea shoots toward light, branching into questions you did not know you carried. Perhaps this is why ancient builders spent lifetimes etching stone, because a single glyph, struck by a single ray of attention centuries later, could ignite an inner spring. The patterns repeat because living minds keep offering them rain. Symbols endure because they are half alive already, waiting only for the moisture of consciousness. Every time we notice one, the old garden greens again, and the next layer of meaning pushes through the soil, opening a petal we did not suspect. Some petals, once open, reveal the fragrance of dreams. Every night we wander a private cinema of shifting images, yet certain scenes recur across cultures: a ladder rising into darkness, a tunnel of light, a river divided by a gatekeeper. Psychologists label these archetypal dreams, observing them in patience from Reykjavik to Rangoon. No matter the language, the same symbolic cast appears, as if the mind, left to roam without daylight censorship, reverts to an ancestral storyboard. Anthropologists collecting indigenous lore find identical motifs on waking soil. The Ilengu of Arnhem Land speak of the rainbow serpent undulating beneath rivers. The Hopi recall Pahana, the lost white brother who carries a star on his brow. West African griots describe the Kalunga line, a watery boundary souls must cross. Different continents, distinct ecologies, yet the plot points click into place like vertebrae, a guardian serpent, a luminous guide, a threshold of water or light. Neuroscientists might attribute this to shared neural wiring. Our visual cortex favors curves and eyes, our limbic system reacts to winding forms as potential predators or roads. But the explanation runs out of breath when myth and dream sink precise details no hunter-gatherer biology demands. Why a seven-coiled snake? Why a three-tiered world tree? Numbers and typology imply memory, not just instinct. Memory of what? Some point to a forgotten Ice Age culture that seeded the myths before dispersing, others invoke catastrophic floods that left scar tissue in story form. A rarer hypothesis imagines consciousness itself as oceanic. Individual minds bob like islands while currents under the surface share nutrients freely. In such a sea, a potent symbol can drift anywhere, beaching on new shores as spontaneously as foam. Consider the feather and the snake, opposite yet inseparable. In Mesoamerica, Quetzalcoatl bears both, quetzal plumes for heaven, serpent coils for earth. In Egypt, the goddess Maat weighs a soul against a single ostrich feather, while Apophis the chaos snake lurks beyond the night sky. Tibetan tankas paint dragons twisting into clouds whose edges fray like down. Across the planet we find the same duet, weightless order and chthonic motion, grace balanced on raw power. It is less a story than a principle, a reminder that ascent and descent happen simultaneously. Modern genetics offers a microcosmic echo. A DNA helix looks serpentine, but its rungs, the paired bases, are called feathers by some molecular illustrators, fanning outward as the latter untwists in replication. Life is literally feather and snake, uplift and coil, knowledge edited by change. If symbols encode principles, then our bodies are living ciphers. Your spine curls like a serpent, your bronchial tree branches into fractals seen in lightning and river deltas. The iris marks a solar rosette within each eye. We walk around carrying the same geometry we paint on temple walls. Little wonder that meditative traditions tell disciples to look within. The curriculum is inscribed on skin and bone. Yet the record is not confined to flesh. Geologists drilling Antarctic ice cores recently retrieved dust from the Sahara locked in 300,000-year-old layers. Winds remember continents long gone. Similarly, quantum physicists demonstrate that entangled particles retain correlation even when separated by oceans. If matter can store relationship, why not meaning? A petroglyph hammered into basalt might still vibrate with the emotional charge of its maker. Sensitive minds standing before it feel a tingle that no museum placard can fully account for. Modern instrumentation hints at this strangeness. Ultra-sensitive squid magnetometers at the Catalhoyuk excavation detected minute magnetic anomalies aligned with ochre handprints, traces perhaps of lightning storms captured in iron oxide during the original application. Archaeologists caution against overreading, yet concede the data are intriguing. The clay remembers the storm. The storm remembers the hand. Memory is less linear than we were taught. Such findings reinvigorate an old idea: the world is scored with grooves of precedent, and symbols are stylus marks deep enough for future minds to replay. We inherit not only genes, but resonances. Each time a child draws a spiral in wet sand, she drops the needle on an ageless record, hearing, though she may not know it, the same track that guided Mason priests and lunar calendar keepers. This recognition changes the moral weight of creativity. To craft a new symbol is to splice yourself into the archive. To ignore symbols is to drift mute through a hall of singing stone. The choice is participation or amnesia. Ancient builders chose participation so decisively that their echoes still ring when their names are dust. Pause and test the thought in your own day. Scroll a screen, spot the recursive nod of the recycling logo, and feel a quick mnemonic spark, 3 arrows chasing themselves in eternal return. The designer who sketched the tri-spiral tapped unknowingly into a Neolithic triscale found at Newgrange, Ireland. 6,000 years dissolve in an eye blink. Your nervous system registers renewal before words catch up. That is the symbol doing its ancient work, bridging, reminding, instructing. The task before us, then, is attentiveness. Whenever a sign repeats on pottery shards, data charts, corporate branding, it invites inquiry. What is speaking here, beneath this image? Sometimes the answer is commerce, but just as often a deeper code nudges through, wearing the mask of trend. The serpent and the feather may one day appear in augmented reality skylines, flashing across smart lenses, their mythic pedigree unnoticed yet undiminished. Attentiveness slowly trains a subtler sense. Patterns once dismissed as coincidence begin to constellate, and you feel an old garden greening again in your perceptions. Jade mirrors basalt, basalt mirrors starlight, starlight mirrors the inward spark. The chain is unbroken, and you are already one link in it, both witness and inscription. Hold that awareness as we continue, symbols unfurling like scrolls in the back of the mind, offering routes home to places we may never have visited, yet somehow always known. Imagine walking through a modern city at twilight. Neon signs bloom over glass towers, their shapes stripped to pure geometry so a passing glance can decode them in a heartbeat. A circle crossed by two diagonal bars means a subway entrance from Tokyo to Toronto. An open hand inside a triangle signals hazard on every continent. We think of these icons as inventions of efficiency, yet they are the heirs of petroglyph and temple frieze. The mind trusts a form it has rehearsed for epochs. Look closer at the street itself. The manhole cover beneath your shoes is patterned with interlocking hexagons. Engineers choose that lattice because it distributes weight, but bees and Babylonian bricklayers chose it first, compelled by the same invisible arithmetic. Above, the city grid branches into smaller and smaller tributaries until alleys mimic capillaries, until the aerial map resembles the venation of a leaf. A hidden dialogue persists between blood vessel, leaf vein, and road, each copying a precedent older than concrete or chlorophyll, the principle of maximized flow with minimal material. The pattern is economical because it is eternal. Scientists call this Murray's Law, and fluid dynamic equations confirm its efficiency, yet Murray's Law merely quantified what nature and artisans practiced by feel. The result is a quiet everywhere mirror. Whether you peer through a microscope or down from a satellite, the same branching syntax writes itself. No committee decreed the resemblance. The structure insists. Shift focus, not a sound. Archaeologists performing acoustic tests inside New Grange's Corbeld Passage discovered that low male chanting at 110 Hz sets the chamber stones humming. That same frequency resonates in the human thoracic cavity, creating feedback between architecture and body. Visitors describe vibration in the sternum as though the monument momentarily loans them its voice. EEG studies show brief synchronization of brainstem rhythms with the pulse of the room. The symbol, upgraded into architecture, reaches back through air to tune the nervous system of anyone who steps inside. Electromagnetic surveys at Teotihuacan reveal mica layers sandwiched between pyramid tiers, mica that has no structural purpose but excellent dielectric properties. Some researchers speculate it amplified telluric currents, turning the pyramid into a resonant circuit. If so, pilgrims climbing the Avenue of the Dead were quite literally walking through a broadcast, their bodies acting as antennae. Again, stone partners with flesh, code with carrier. Consider how little of this interplay we consciously notice. The hum of a fluorescent lamp at 120 Hz can elevate beta wave activity, sharpening focus. The flicker of a candle settles alpha waves, inviting reverie. The ancients captured these effects in rite and ritual, drums tuned to heart tempo, torches casting rhythmic shadows on cavern walls, embedding physiological triggers inside spiritual narrative. A worshipper felt the divine, and the divine felt like coherent bodily entrainment. Today we stand among electronic derivatives of those rites. Stadium bass drops hit the chest at 60 Hz, approximating heartbeat doubled. Synchronized smartphone flashlights turn crowds into shimmering constellations. We rarely name these moments sacred, yet the biology is unchanged. The body recognizes the code even when the mind calls it entertainment. This recognition hints at a final secret: symbols are interactive technology. They do not merely remind, they upgrade perception in real time. A mandala printed on thin paper can slow respiration. A 5-note pentatonic scale resolves tension in brains from Boston to Beijing. The scent spiral of burning sage nudges limbic circuits toward calm weather, or not one believes in cleansing spirits. The hardware of consciousness responds because the firmware was written long ago in primal encounters with star, snake, feather, flame. To live symbol literate, then, is to pilot oneself with subtler controls. You choose the talisman above your desk not for superstition but for calibration. You curate the icons on your home screen as a musician tunes strings. The task is not to escape the mirror but to polish it so that the reflection grows lucid enough to steer by. And perhaps that is why the elders carved, painted, and sung these forms into every surface. They were building instruction manuals legible across epochs, written in the one language gravity and dream will never forget. We have only to read with the whole nervous system. When the serpent curls in subway tile or the star flares in a corporate logo, pause, feel the resonance, let it adjust something small inside. The world is guiding itself through us, shape by shape, breath by breath, toward a memory large enough to hold us all. Ocean waves seem to forget every footprint, yet they remember in stone. Divers off Yonaguni Island in Japan descend through warm blue water and meet terraces carved with right angles so sharp they defy easy geology. Some geologists insist tectonic fractures made the shapes, yet others point to tool marks chiseled in andesite. Whether natural or hewn, the monument sits 40 feet below modern sea level, submerged roughly when the last ice age melted. A similar puzzle lies across the planet near Bimini in the Bahamas, where massive limestone blocks form a half-sunken roadway. Sonar reveals L-shaped joints that echo Cyclopean masonry in pre-Incan Peru. The Atlantic and Pacific bear shadows of walls built for lungs that no longer breathe air. Stories of drowned homelands arise wherever such ruins linger. Tamil fishermen still recite verses about Kumari Kandam, a vanished continent south of India. Maori elders speak of Hawaii, the birthplace hidden beneath waves. Plato named his version Atlantis. Pacific navigators sing of Lemuria, Mu, the mother island that sank like sunset. Skeptics classify these tales as flood myths, but flood myths themselves repeat too precisely, like an alarm set in collective memory. Even the Hebrew word Tiham, the deep, appears in Sumerian tablets as Tiamat, the chaos sea that must be tamed for order to rise. Layer after layer, cultures remember water breaking boundaries, then rebuilding civilization on its receding shore. Geologists confirm at least 9 cataclysmic sea level jumps in the last 12 millennia, each recorded as fjord transgressions in core samples. Paleoclimatologists map a sudden melt pulse around 6,200 BCE that raised oceans nearly 2 meters in a human lifetime. Such a flood would swallow every coastal settlement worldwide. If those settlements traded knowledge and symbols, the ocean became their library, scattering texts rewritten as coral. Consider an alternative view. Perhaps the symbols traveled not west to east, but shore to inland ahead of rising tides, encoded in memory because stone would drown. A migrating priesthood might carve spiral petroglyphs on high cliffs, trusting that the shape would convey both warning and cosmology when read by descendants who never saw the sea come in. Geneticists recently traced an enigmatic Y chromosome haplogroup DM55 from the high Himalayas to the Andaman Islands and onward into pockets of Japan, an improbable zigzag implying ancient sailors hugging coasts now sunken. If human genomes can island hop in deep time, symbolic genomes surely rode the same currents. A feathered serpent stitched into bark cloth here, a star compass etched into canoe ribs there. When the voyagers reached new land, they rebuilt the mythic lexicon like gardeners grafting lost fruit onto living rootstock. Archaeologists at Göbekli Tepe uncovered a carving of a headless man beside a vulture, echoing later Egyptian sky burials and Tibetan Jada rites. How did a ritual idea migrate more than 5,000 kilometers and 6,000 years? Picture a chain of memory keepers sharing funeral doctrine across generations of wandering, each clan reducing the lesson to a portable glyph: bird with outstretched wings, circle for the soul, severed square for the relinquished body. A refugee can abandon many possessions but not the story that instructs how to die. Modern neuroscience shows the hippocampus, our navigator, partners with the visual cortex to store spatial stories as image sets. Under stress, the brain compresses narrative into vivid icons for quick recall. Trauma survivors sketch recurring emblems in therapy. Disaster myths might operate the same way at civilizational scale, preserving vital information against oblivion. A flood veteran carved an arc, an earthquake survivor drew a zigzag lightning, a voyager etched a star path. Over millennia, those survival snapshots became cosmology, ethics, and art. If the ocean kept the stones, volcanoes kept the metals. In the Andean highlands, archaeometallurgists found traces of platinum fused to gold at temperatures unmatched by local furnaces. Equally enigmatic are vitrified hill fort walls in Scotland where quartz crystals melted into glass. Lightning can fuse sand, but not stone ramparts 4 meters thick. Myths of starfire, weapons, and smelter gods may garble geological events, meteor impacts, volcanic lightning, yet they encode an essential caution: fire changes matter's story forever. That caution surfaces again in the near-universal taboo against naming the divine spark lightly. From the Hebrew tetragrammaton to the Polynesian manna, cultures protect the syllables that summon power. Written characters for these forces often reduce to simple strokes: a triple flame, a single dot, a zigzag wisp. The simpler the glyph, the more freight it carries, as though meaning condenses into elemental shapes under pressure of reverence. Cognitive linguists observe that minimal strokes are recalled more reliably than ornate sigils, ancestral insurance against forgetfulness. Notice how the pattern recurs. Catastrophe births migration. Migration carries knowledge. Knowledge condenses into symbols. Symbols seed new temples. Temples anchor communities resilient enough to face the next catastrophe. The cycle is agricultural, geological, spiritual, a crop rotation for consciousness. We inherit the latest planting phase, sowing our own icons across silicon and sky. Emoji rain on screens at 8 billion per minute, each a stylized fruit of old branches, heart, spiral, lightning, house. Some call this flattening, others call it preparation, new seeds seeking soil in a planetary mind. If so, our task remains what it has always been, discern which symbols carry nourishment and which harvest only noise. The ancients filtered by ordeal, vision quests, priestly schools, initiation labyrinths. We filter by algorithm and attention span, yet the principle stands. The shapes that endure are those that fit the hidden architecture of body, earth, and star. They will keep returning until we fully digest their instruction. So listen when the sea murmurs against drowned terraces, when neon twists into ancestral knots, when a dream replays an unfamiliar yet unmistakable emblem. Somewhere between tectonic plate and synaptic gap, the same intelligence is sculpting, flooding, and remembering. It speaks without language yet shapes every language. To hear it is to stand ankle-deep in surf at midnight, sensing ruins beneath the waves and constellations above, each reflecting the other in ripples that reach the bones. Remember that midnight shoreline, the hush before a tide turns. Imagine kneeling there and pressing a finger into wet sand. The print remains a moment, then fills with seawater and vanishes. Yet under starlight a plankton glow traces the outline in brief bioluminescent fire. Even an erased mark keeps echoing through subtler layers of matter. Physicists came to a similar conclusion when they proved that no information ever truly disappears. What falls into a black hole is encoded on its event horizon as faint quantum ripples. The cosmos itself is a memory keeper, refusing oblivion. This principle scales all the way down to you. Each heartbeat sends a pressure wave along arteries. Laser Doppler recordings can reconstruct the pattern hours later from the shimmer of capillaries in the skin. Your body leaves sonic graffiti on the air, a murmur only sensitive instruments, or perhaps sensitive ears, detect. When elders in Siberia identify which hunter is returning by listening to footsteps crunching snow, they are reading a symbol set etched in percussive rhythm. Culture begins whenever perception grows patient enough to harvest such signatures. Patience is in short supply amid our present technicolor torrent. Yet technology also widens the archive. Radio telescopes capture hydrogen emblems whispered by galaxies 2 billion light-years away. Gravitational wave detectors translate colliding black holes into upward chirps we can plot on paper. Those chirps graph as spirals, the same curve ancient artisans carved into bone flutes. Whether the resemblance is coincidence or cosmic would hardly matters. The calligraphy of creation is consistent. Astrobiologists searching for life beyond Earth debate what universal symbol might declare intelligence across incomprehensible gulfs. Some suggest a prime number sequence, others a Mandelbrot set, others a stylized hand. But perhaps the sign has already gone out, a Voyager golden record graced with a pulsar map and a silhouette of hydrogen spin-flip transition, a star and a spiral contained in a single disk. We have become deliberate symbol senders, joining the lineage of vulture carvers, pyramid masons, and Polynesian starpath chanters. What then will our descendants rescue from our flood of icons? They may discard the brand logos yet keep the recycling tri-spiral, not because of eco-messaging but because the geometry rings true. They may forget corporate mascots but preserve the schematic of intertwined helices that illuminates CRISPR gene editing. As always, the symbols most likely to live are those that align with structures deeper than preference, shapes that echo the body, the atom, the nebula. This insight offers a compass amid cultural noise. When a new emblem claims attention, test it on 3 frontiers. Body resonance, does it alter breath, posture, pulse? Natural analogy, can you find its geometry in shells, rivers, or auroras? Translatability, does it cross languages without losing power? An image that passes all 3 emerges as more than fashion, it steps into the perennial current. Become a steward of such images and you inherit the silent vocation of all memory keepers. Stewardship does not demand priestly robes, it begins in small gestures. Carve a spiral on a clay cup so morning coffee reminds the hand of galaxies. Arrange city plants in hexagonal plots so bees read the invitation. Teach children the star inside every apple core, let them name the seeds planets and the flesh orbit. In doing so you weave continuity between sensory life and cosmic pattern, making daily acts feel like footnotes to a grander manuscript. Grand manuscripts occasionally turn literal. In Ethiopia, monks still copy the Kabra Nagast on vellum, each letter an angular echo of Proto-Semitic glyphs. In Japan, calligraphers trace the Heart Sutra across rice paper until muscle memory merges with mantra. Neuroscientists scanning their brains observe heightened theta rhythms, the same frequencies recorded in deep-stage REM sleep where narrative consolidates. Script becomes dream, becomes embodied knowing, a loop as old as pigment on stone. Digital scribe work can follow suit. Coders shaping graphical user interfaces borrow from Bauhaus minimalism, which borrowed from Egyptian proportional grids rediscovered during Napoleon's expeditions. Every swipe left or pinch to zoom passes through that ancestry, quietly tutoring fingers in ancient ergonomics. The wheel does not simply repeat, it refines. Still, refinement is not the endpoint. The deepest symbols eventually dissolve back into the uncarved source, as Taoist sages remind us with the empty circle of Enso. Meister Eckhart echoed the same paradox: the more words we expend on God, the further we are from the truth. At ultimate scale, symbol and silence converge, line returning to point, seed to dark fertile loam. There, potential waits again, unspent but expectant. We stand then midway in an endless respiration, exhaling patterns, inhaling silence, etching marks that will one day wash away but not be lost. The horizon ahead glows with ruins unborn, myths unnamed, codes unbroken, yet their shapes already haunt our imaginations the way faint starlight promises dawn. To notice is to participate is to remember is to steward the very order concealed within apparent chaos. So the next time a feather drifts onto your path or a coil of hose mirrors a serpent in garden twilight, pause. Let the geometry settle on the tongue of thought. Somewhere the first mason, the first shaman, and the first star are nodding in quiet accord, glad that the line they traced still finds its way into wondering eyes. When you finally lift your gaze from the ground, night has deepened. Even a clouded sky cannot hide the constellations, they pierce the haze like memories refusing anesthesia. The Greeks strung those lights into hunters and swans, but earlier peoples saw boats, jaguars, spinning spindles. Change the story, yet the stars hold their places, the mind edits lines, never dots. Astronomers still draw stick figures on digital sky maps, tracing heritage beneath software. Every 90 minutes the International Space Station streaks overhead, a bright, fast-moving point younger than most houseplants. Yet the ISS logo contains a stylized orbit and starburst first sketched on Soviet mission patches, themselves riffing on Vostok emblems that lifted geometry from Leninist banners which borrowed radiating suns from Orthodox icons, which were adapted from Byzantine mosaics echoing Mithraic cave art. A continuous genealogy compressed into a luminous blink crossing suburbs at 17,000 miles per hour. Inside that station, astronauts sleep strapped to wall pods so REM-paralyzed limbs stay still. Their dreams sometimes feature floating ladders or endless hallways, a neural attempt to reinsert vertical reference. Deprived of gravity's script, the brain still demands up and down. This clinging to axis is why world trees rise through mythic soil, Yggdrasil, the Saba, the Ashvatha. Verticality is more than physics, it is psychological scaffolding. Remove it and the mind rebuilds in symbol. Psychiatrist Stanislav Grof once mapped thousands of altered state drawings and found 4 repeating motifs: spiral tunnels, fetal curls, serpent coils, and eyes radiating light. He proposed a cartography of the psyche where each form marks a threshold phase: constriction, regression, release, and witnessing. Modern fMRI studies of subjects on psilocybin echo his findings as serotonin 2A receptors ignite, the visual cortex produces tunnel and eye imagery with uncanny regularity. The symbol is not optional ornament, it is the shape of brain states too vast for prose. Meanwhile, linguists analyzing hashtags discovered that the emoji appears most often alongside hashtag awakening and hashtag kundalini, digital shorthand for experiences Grof described on paper. The spiral has migrated from Paleolithic ochre to Unicode .U+1F300, retaining its assignment as marker of transition. Technology changes costume, not choreography. Sometimes choreography erupts unexpectedly. In 2020, synchronized drones formed a giant double helix over Shanghai's riverside, celebrating genome editing. Millions watched in person or via phone, instinctively cheering when the helix unzipped into fluttering wings, feather and snake again, written in LEDs. Social media analysts noted a spike in user metrics, a heart rate surges measured by smartwatch photoplethysmography. The ancient code fired modern skin. Perhaps the skin has always been ready. Dermatologists categorize certain growth patterns, Langer's lines, Blaschko's stripes that curve across the body in fractal arcs, invisible until disease or tattoo ink reveals them. Our hides host latent spirals waiting for pigment. Maori Moko artists, unaware of dermatological jargon, follow these lines intuitively. The result heals faster, sits truer, and guides identity stories across generations. Anatomy is a map the symbolist learns to read with pigment instead of scalpel. Reading extends to sound. Western composers map scales in fifths because Pythagoras traced monochord ratios, but Pythagoras heard ratios in hammer blows, a blacksmith's accidental music echoing older forges. Ethnomusicologists compiling lullabies from 500 cultures find a near-universal descending minor third, the same interval wolves used to summon packmates. A mother humming inherits a predatory chorus transmuted from hunt to comfort. Symbols do not judge, they reassign. Reassignment is vital for survival. An emblem born of dread can become an emblem of hope if culture flips its valence. The swastika carried solar fortune for millennia before a brief hijacking blighted it in the West. Yet in parts of Asia it still decorates temples, reclaiming dawn from shadow. The lesson is sobering. Symbols are potent precisely because they are neutral until charged. Handle them without awareness and you wire explosives into public memory. Handle them wisely and you weave bridges over centuries of fracture. Wisdom, however, is cumulative error distilled. Alchemists spent centuries chasing literal gold before realizing transmutation meant subtle body, not crucible. Their notebooks teem with lions eating snakes, kings dissolving in baths, the grotesque turning gorgeous by allegory. Chemists later mined those texts for lab techniques, while psychologists pillaged them for individuation maps. Even failure fertilizes when translated through symbol. So as you listen to these entwining threads, myth, molecule, melody, feel how they braid into a single rope of recognition. Tug on any end and the others tighten. The feather tugs the serpent, the star tugs the seed, the spiral tugs the city grid. Your own thoughts, yes, even the mundane grocery list, ride loops laid down by ancestors selecting grain by moon phase, drawing crescents on pottery to track harvest time. The banal is seated with the sacred. That recognition shifts the axis of living. You begin to sense subtext in design, rhythm in architecture, teaching in accident. A cracked sidewalk reveals hexagons. You thank bees for tutoring municipal concrete. A child's whirl on a playground roundabout mirrors a galaxy. You nod to Andromeda. Nothing becomes background. Every shape hums. And when background hum rises to chorale, the strange serenity of belonging descends. No fear of insignificance survives once you see your fingertip spiral mirrored in cyclone and seashell, in Van Gogh's skies and Bessel functions. You occupy the precise midpoint between quark and quasar, reading and being read by patterns that neither origin nor end can fully claim. Stand in that midpoint and the next symbol, the one that has followed you from dream into daylight, will clarify its assignment. Maybe you sketch it absent-mindedly on notepaper, maybe you incorporate it into a logo, a lullaby, a garden path. Whatever you choose, you will have joined the lineage, seed carrier, mirror bearer, memory keeper. And somewhere, centuries ahead, another pair of wondering eyes will recognize the shape, breathe a little easier, and know without knowing why that chaos still conceals a secret order. Silence is not empty, it is shaped. Close your eyes and let the sounds around you fall away until you notice the fine grain beneath quiet, a subtle pulse, like a distant drum. That pulse is your own blood echoing in the ear, yet it feels larger than the body, as though the room itself were breathing. Stay with it. After a few calm heartbeats, the mind begins to trace forms on the darkness behind the lids, a barely lit circle, a rising line, a turning spiral. This is the moment when language hasn't started but meaning has. The first alphabet is made of attention. Now, open your eyes and scan the nearest objects. A mug arcs into a handle that could be a crescent moon. A window frame divides into the equal-armed cross the Hopi call the path of the four winds. Your phone wakes to a glowing apple bitten on one side, echo of the Sumerian star that meant breath. Symbols were never lost, they only traded marble for polymer, papyrus for pixels. To work with them consciously is to accept an invitation the world has been extending since ochre touched limestone. Begin simply. Each morning choose one shape that appears without seeking, the hexagon of a pavement tile, the infinity loop of headphone cable, the flame icon on a stove knob. Sit with it for 60 seconds. Ask 3 gentle questions. What part of the body mirrors this shape? The hexagon lives in honeycomb lung tissue, the loop in bowed intestines, the flame in coronary arteries branching like fire. Feel the correspondence, breathe there. Where does nature repeat it? Ice crystals, tidal eddies, lizard scales, lightning forks, seeing the echo widens the perimeter of kinship. You share structure with storms and bees. What principle might it teach? The hexagon whispers efficient sharing, the loop murmurs return, the flame insists on transformation. Turn principle into practice. Coordinate a team project like a honeycomb, finish a task by circling back, let an old idea burn so a brighter one can rise in the ash. After a week the exercise gains momentum. Shapes you ignored yesterday begin waving like familiar neighbors. They guide choices so subtly that intuition sharpens. You arrange a presentation slide following golden ratio spacing without touching a ruler. You navigate a tough conversation by picturing the serpentine path of river flow instead of the rigid line of argument. You plan your calendar in moon phase blocks rather than linear grids and find, to your quiet surprise, that fatigue drops and creativity spikes. Science, too, confirms the benefits. Ergonomics research shows that golden ratio layouts reduce eye movement by up to 15%, conserving cognitive load. Conflict resolution studies reveal that conversations paced with spiral return, revisiting core concerns at wider, calmer intervals, triple the odds of mutual agreement. Chronobiology suggests our bodies prefer waxing-waning work rhythms, 90-minute focus sprints followed by 20-minute recess, a miniature lunar cycle thrumming in muscle and marrow. When symbol meets habit, biology nods along. Ritual emerges almost without trying. You sketch a small enso before opening email, giving the void priority over clamoring inboxes. You keep a smooth stone etched with a sigil on the desk. Touching its weathered curve reminds the fingers that permanence grows from patience. Friends notice your ease and ask what changed. You answer with a story about feathers and snakes, stars and seeds, and hear in your own voice the cadence of elders you have never met. The practical and the mystical begin to overlap like sheets of vellum. Need to simplify a cluttered room? Trace the number 3 on paper, then keep only what fits a triad of purpose, beauty, and memory. Designing a logo? Start with a circle and break it at one point, completion plus invitation. Negotiating deadlines across cultures? Anchor the schedule to equinox or solstice dates, events every civilization already honors, whether silently or with lanterns and drums. Efficiency hides inside reverence. One caution, potency scales with awareness. If a symbol keeps surfacing, a crow feather on city pavement, a double number on digital clocks, pause long enough to decide whether to engage. Curiosity opens doors, obsession can narrow them. The ancients handled this by apprenticing under mentors who knew the terrain. In a data-driven era, mentorship can mean reliable sources, reflective journaling, a circle of peers willing to question. A symbol worth keeping welcomes scrutiny. Yet even scrutiny must soften eventually, folding back into listening. For all the lines and loops etched across human history, the oldest glyph remains the unmarked field. Call it silence, zero, emptiness, the Tao. Monks brush it as a blank circle, mathematicians write it as zero, musicians rest 4 beats in a measure of hush. Let that spacious note follow every patterned phrase you live. It is what allows pattern to resound instead of repeating like static. And so we come to a gentle parting. You have walked the pillars of Göbekli Tepe, scanned flooded terraces, felt your pulse in the acoustic dome of New Grange. None of those places moved, you did. The journey proved the mirror, not the map. Whatever symbol crosses your path next, on a billboard, a skyline, a ceramic shard, consider sharing it. Describe where it found you, how it made you pause, what principle it might hold. Your comment will be another carved mark in our common cliff face, another echo for future wanderers to hear. May the shapes guide your seeing, the silence teach your hearing, and the hidden order show itself in small, ordinary things. Notice, breathe, pass it on.